Hello my darlings, how are you? I hope that you're well. I wanted to begin this video and about abandonment to go a bit more in depth because I did a short for the YouTube and the Instagram, and I got one or two maybe comments on wanting me to expand on this topic, which I thought was a very good, really good notion and idea. So I am going to therefore give examples and demonstrations through how abandonment trigger moments, if you want to use that word. I know that's a very common word nowadays, but it seems to, fit the bill. So I'll just use that. Or touching on the wound, which I always like to say, touching on a wound. And the reason that you will recognize if this is a belief that you're struggling with. Okay, darling, so let's have a chat about the abandonment. Okay, so what I learned from my situation about feeling abandoned was that in my relationships with males and with girlfriends, women in general, I noticed that I had an abandonment issue, but I didn't know quite where it came from. So that was my big struggle, because I had never understood, like, I wasn't abandoned. Like, if you think about abandonment, you're like, well, it sounds like you would have been left, like an orphan or something. And that wasn't abandoned in the sense that that's what I was thinking and terming it as the definition of abandonment. So then I had to dig a little bit more in understanding what was the pattern that I was realizing in my relationships with males and females, where that stemmed from and where I needed to change it, because abandonment can be on so many levels of where that belief is stemming from. So what I did was reverse engineer and try to figure out what was the first experience that I remembered feeling left or to my own devices, that no one was taking up for me or no one was coming to rescue me. Because isn't that really what we want? The opposite of abandonment is feeling that you want to be rescued. And I could get into another whole video, if you would really like me to, about being rescued, because there's this sense of nurturing that comes with feeling and wanting to be rescued, which is the opposite. Being rescued is, in the sense, it's the same belief makeup of if you feel abandoned in life. Because when you feel abandoned, you want someone to come and rescue you. And so you will subconsciously not realize what you're doing, but you will subjectively put yourself out there, and you will reflect back every situation that will be deemed subconsciously as a way for you wanting to be rescued. But until we can learn through the abandonment and changing the belief system that we must become the rescuer of ourselves, we won't understand why we are individually doing the things that we're doing in our daily life. We think it might just be like, say for an example, subconsciously starting a fight with your significant other, and then being, having some kind of attitude or something, or just creating an argument for the simple fact that you want them to come back in and pick you up and collectively gather you up and make you feel happy and give you love and kisses and cuddles, because if you know that, if I do this, I'm going to get this, you will subconsciously play out those roles, because that's what we are. We're playing out roles every day of our lives. And so I would do that because I always desire that nurturing. And like I've said many times, I've stated on my channel, and in my blog post, which is so quite funny, that once you rescue yourself from new beliefs, and you also learn to rescue yourself because you are God and you have everything within you to heal yourself. You do not need another person to come in and make up the difference to feel and become the person that is your greatest version of yourself, right? The mermaid goddess within you, because you have all of the tools in your treasure chest already. They all pre-exist. But because we're not subconsciously aware of all of our actions and the beliefs that we picked up through adulthood or childhood, wherever, it could have been one small little snippet of a thing. Somebody might have just said something to you and it imprinted a belief or gave you the notion of thinking about that belief, and then you created a belief surrounding it. And so that's where we've got to work past those things. So like I said many, many times, I had developed the abandonment issues, and I'm being very revealing of myself and my, because I think that it's important to be vulnerable for you so that you can learn from me. And that's very important for a teacher, to be vulnerable so that I can get my message across, okay? So when I was little, and I think I shared this on a video before too, is that I never understood where my abandonment would have come from my relationships with girlfriends. And I used to think for years and years, until I redeveloped and new beliefs about friendships, especially with Christian women, that women can't be trusted. And I didn't realize that this is what I was doing, but I absolutely was doing it, because in my mind, that was a belief that I believed. So invariably, I would always have to mirror reflect that back to me, right? Because everyone is us pushed out. So meaning that although I would become friends with women, it would invariably turn sour, and I would feel as though, yeah, that wasn't going to work out because she got jealous, and that's how it always plays out. I like men better because men aren't, don't have the issues that women do. And you do this, you develop this sense of comforting, because it's a survival skill that we learn in order to survive, whether it sounds like maniacal and insane. Regardless, that's what we do to survive. It's sort of like, according to how you're raised, you develop these beliefs. I always thought a volatile environment, from my dad being a alcoholic, that was normality to me, is being around destructive personalities and anger and hostility and screaming and fighting and domestic violence. Like, that was normal to me. So then when you get with someone that's like, what are you talking about? No, you're not supposed to hit a person, especially a girl, That's why when people see people and they're like, I don't understand why that person would stay with that person, because it's normal to them. Do you understand? Like, it's normal to them. And it's neither bad nor good. It's just that's how people develop belief systems. And so until you become that greatest version of yourself, and you understand that you're a mermaid goddess, and that, no, that's not actually, that's why it feels so terrible, like you don't understand where that's coming from. Like, why does this feel so bad? Because I used to remember that when I would get around a normal relationship with someone, I thought that their normality in their relationship was weird. It seemed bizarre to me, like, that's dysfunctional. To me, their relationship was dysfunctional because it was normal. Like, respect and all of that sort of thing was like, and so what a lot of times happens, like it did for me many years, I would have to create, like, I thrived on chaos. Because when you grow up in a chaotic home, that's normal to me. So your mind will have to try to create and reinvent chaos and you do it on a subconscious level, you don't realize, because it sounds maddening, like why would you do that? But in order for survival of the fittest, when you were a young child, say for example, that's normality. So in order to get back to that normality, you've got to create the chaos, because that's normal. It's normal to have everything going awry. And so learning to settle into that, learning to settle into, like, it's not normal for people to be screaming all the time. That's not normal. That's why now I barely can handle noise, because now I understand, like, nature is normal to me. Beautiful silence is normal to me. But the world that is not derivative of the world that we live in, is it? Everything is so chaotic, and people think that that's the way life is, but it's really not. You just have to learn to attune yourself to different things once you create new beliefs. And once you listen to new beliefs at night and become that greatest version of yourself, you'll understand all of these different frailties. And I wouldn't say that in a negative way, because I shouldn't have said frailties, but in a sense, these negative inklings that we've had in our lives are not normal. And so once you understand that it's okay to be normal, that everything is right in the world, and you're doing a good job, and you're always doing a good job, and you don't have to be on this roller coaster all the time, that it's okay to sit in silence and to evaluate your environment and understand you don't have to live on eggshells, and I used to have to, I lived like that my entire life. So you do understand that it's really a good thing that if you can implement that into your life, because you learn to adapt. That does help you, when you come from an extremely abusive and dysfunctional home. So use and take all of those beautiful, lovely things that occurred to you. And I'm saying, like, if you were molested, if you were raped, and that's hard to say. I understand that that's very difficult to say, but listen, we're here, we're together, we're all in this together. And I had a child that was brutally murdered. I went in and seen the crime scene, the bloods, everything. And if you can learn that, to remove emotions from this and just take responsibility for everything in your life, and try to find always the silver lining in your life, and be accountable and be responsible and take accountability for your life. It's okay that you've had all of these different experiences in life. It's okay. I know that that is a very, very big statement for me to say, but you wouldn't be who you are today had you not experienced that. The thing that I want you to understand is I want you to find the good. There's something good. You agreed to it. Before you entered your mortal body, you agreed to it. It was your contract. You contracted that you want to experience these things in life. Now, is that difficult to maybe swallow for some people? I do understand that. But I'm here to tell you, I've experienced a trauma that I don't know that anything else could be even more difficult than to lose a child to being brutally murdered, okay? So I speak to you with the sincerest of love and understanding and unconditional love. So I do not say these things lightly for you to think that, like, oh, easy for you to say, Raquel. No. Please don't misunderstand me, because it's not easy to say. It's very difficult when you've had very hard things happen in your life, and that's the worst of them. But I've experienced many, many things in life. So I don't take that lightly, and I don't say it lightly, but I say it because that shows how strong and powerful you are, especially women, that you are so powerful. You are a goddess, and there is nothing above you. And so there's nothing that you cannot overcome or accomplish. There's nothing. And I don't care what you would give. Oh, well, yeah, everything but. Nope. I am a limitless person, and I believe in limitless potential. So understand that as well. And the abandonment, like I said, I know I'm going roundabout, but you know what? I think you like a good chin wag, don't you? And but my abandonment, I start to realizing, was when I was a youngster, and I developed the belief that when my mom and dad were married for many, many years, right? I was 11 years old when my mom finally left my dad. Now, my dad had, now this is getting a bit personal, but I want to share it with you. And understandably too, I've forgiven my father, and we've worked through our relationship and everything. And I did loads and loads of, you know, internal work and all. But when I was 11 years old, so my dad obviously was a very bad alcoholic, okay? And there was domestic violence, and it was very abusive childhood. And so I was the oldest child. Well, I have a half brother, a half brother or step brother. Half, it's a half, right? We have the same dad, that's half. And he didn't live with us, but my mom and dad, I was the first child. And so when I was 11, my dad nearly killed my mother, and he threw her down the steps and poured lighter fluid everywhere on my mom, and all on our house and on our steps and everything, and poured it all over her body, and then held a match to her, and like she was really, really petrified and scared, and like she fell down the steps and everything. And so she was terrified for her life. And so that was like one in many, many occurrences, okay? So it creates children that are terrified. They live in fear constantly. And so, but my mom had gotten, you know, a bit much. She was done for. She said, you know, I think I'm in danger of my life, you know? And so she ended up separating from my father, okay? Now, in the process of this, I don't say this story either to make my dad look in a bad light, because, you know, he is a recovering addict and recovering alcoholic of like 45 years now, which is wonderful and good. But at the time, listen, that's a lot of trauma for a little child. And I had two younger brothers. So when they separated, we were living at my grandmother's house, and I really, really loved it. And I felt I was starting to blossom as a young girl, you know. And so that was for like 10 months. And then my mom comes to us, me and my brothers, after 10 months, and she says, we're going to move back in with daddy. And I said, oh, no, you know, like, he's not quit drinking, you know. And she's like, yeah, but God's going to save him. And so see where this predicament comes in. And I know many people have got to relate to me in this situation, where that developed a belief in me that I couldn't trust women, because if you can't trust your own your own mom, if you can't trust your mom to protect you from somebody that's volatile, and I had witnessed all of these things, you know, the abuse and physical abuse and all of that. What's not to say that, like, I'm just this vulnerable child. You are taking the battle for me and my siblings. But what happens if, like, there was no trust there? Because I'm like, you're going to just go back to him? Like, this is asinine. You know, I didn't use that word when I was a little girl, but in my mind, I was terrified, and I was so angry that she, you know, I was so angry that she was going to put us back in that environment. Now, I couldn't articulate that in that way, but I cried profusely, and I was like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. Like, I used to pray for the weekends, you know, when my dad would go off on a bender, and, you know, the police would be called to him, and he would be in jail for the weekend, you know. I was loving life then, because I didn't ever want him to come home. I was terrified of him. And so it was nothing but absolute horrific experiences whenever my dad was at the house. And so, no, I didn't. And so then obviously I'm developing this belief about men because he's the only masculine figure that I've got in my life as an example, because I had no other friends. Like, I wasn't allowed to stay with anyone. No one was allowed to stay with me because we never knew if my dad he was unpredictable. What if he went on a bender or something? Like, we couldn't have other people being in our home when my dad was having, one of his episodes, which was often. So, there wasn't that. So that was the only kind of masculine example that I had, and that was not a good one. So do you understand why I have I'm thinking back, why I would develop absolute distrust for men and absolute distrust for women? Because in a sense, I was abandoned by both. Do you know what I mean? Like, my dad was not psychologically or emotionally there for me. Like, I didn't ever touch my dad or go around my father. Like, there was no hugging. Everything felt very uncomfortable. I was very uneasy around him. And it was probably because of all the experiences that I had seen that were traumatizing. So I was very reluctant to get anywhere near him. Even when he was only sober, like he'd come home from the work or whatnot. But back in the day, they would even drink and stuff on the job. That was how construction people were, So it wasn't like you clock into work and like, oh, you don't partake of, drugs, or you don't partake of alcohol. No, you did it on the job, and you got along fine, But anyway, my point is that, so that's where I developed that belief of, I don't trust men, okay? And what happens when you don't trust men and you don't trust women, the two significant sources in your life, that you go about with that belief, recreating that belief with every woman and every man that you ever come in contact with, okay? And so that's exactly what happened to me. And it is based on the abandonment. That is where that stems from. So distrust and abandonment they go hand in hand. And so if you can resonate with that and understand, like, oh, now I know where the belief comes. Now how do I want to change that belief? So what is the opposite of distrust and abandonment? Some of the affirmations that I imprinted in my subconscious belief were, I am always nurtured. I am always loved. No one ever leaves me. No one ever abandons me. Everyone loves being in relationships with me. Everyone is trustworthy. I can trust anyone. Everyone is so trustworthy. I am trustworthy. So all you do is reverse engineer that belief. So what is the opposite of abandonment and distrust? You find those, the opposite. If you need to go on the dictionary and the Google and say, what is the synonym or what is the antonym for this particular thing? And then you create a belief and do it very short, and try to use I am at the beginning. If you can't, it's okay. But try to keep the sentence short, like I am trustworthy, because I am is the God within you. And so you're stating a clarified fact that is in the present now moment, not in the future, not in the past. Like, obviously, I will be. No, you don't want to use that, because then you'll always be leaning towards when it happens in the future. You're living in the now. You only have now. So always use it in the present tense formula, okay? So I am trustworthy. I am trustworthy of others. Everyone loves me. All women love me, especially Christian women. Everyone wants to always remain in a friendship with me. Everyone loves being friends with me. I always have. It has always been that way. Like, use those kind of things, like create a person that you want to be. That's how you're going to do it with these affirmations. And nothing is within limits. I mean, I say the most outrageous affirmations that you would think are like, was she Looney Tunes, I'm a bit mad. Yes, we all in the spiritual realm, we're a bit mad, aren't we? But that's where all the misfits live. The mystic misfits, I like to call us, mermaid mystic misfits. And so, and that's a beautiful, charming little thing to think about, I think, because we're all so beautiful and lovely. You know, I think about that Christmas, it was at the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer back in the, you know, those clay figures, and it was like the toys, the misfits toys or something, like they all got thrown away or whatever. And I always think we're kind of like that, me and you and us, you know, mermaids and stuff. I think that's I love that little movie, so cute. But anyway, so I hope this helped you, and I hope that this gave you some clarification on what abandonment is, and like through my example, like where that came from. So if you want to jot things down, or if you have a comment that you have any more inquiries, feel free to, you know, log them down onto the comment section, and we'll have another chinwag about it and just have, you know, a good chatter. And thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you're having a lovely day. And as always, I'm most affably yours till my next swim. Cheers, darlings.